Sarah Mitchell held tight to her old bag as the stagecoach came to a stop. The wheels made a loud noise on the dirt road. Dust flew everywhere. She looked out the small window and saw Cedar Ridge, Montana for the first time. It was a small town, with wooden buildings and dirt streets. People walked around doing their daily work. Horses stood tied to posts outside the shops. Sarah took a deep breath. Her heart was beating fast. She had traveled so far to get here, all the way from Chicago. The trip took many days and nights. She was tired and dirty. Her dress was wrinkled and had dust on it, but she was here at last. This was where she would start her new life. She reached into her bag and pulled out a photograph. It was small and a little bent at the corners. She had looked at it many times during the long trip. The picture showed a man with dark hair and serious eyes. His name was Thomas Hartwell. He was the man she came to marry. They had never met in person. They only wrote letters to each other. Sarah remembered the day she saw his letter in the newspaper. It said he was looking for a wife. He owned a ranch and needed someone to help him. He promised to take care of a good woman. Sarah was working in a factory then. The work was hard and the pay was small. She lived in a tiny room with 3 other girls. Life was not easy in the city. She wrote to Thomas right away. In her letter, she told him about herself. She said she was 23 years old. She could cook and clean and sew. She was not afraid of hard work. She wanted a family and a home of her own. Thomas wrote back quickly. He said she sounded like a good woman. He sent money for the train and stagecoach. He said they would marry as soon as she arrived. Now she was here. The stagecoach driver opened the door. "Cedar Ridge," he called out. "End of the line." Sarah stepped down from the coach. Her legs felt weak after sitting so long. She looked around the town. Where was Thomas? He said he would meet her here. She saw men walking around, but none of them looked like the man in the photograph. The driver put her bag on the ground. "That all you got, miss?" he asked. "Yes," Sarah said. "That is everything." The man looked at her with kind eyes. "You meeting someone here?" "Yes," Sarah said. My husband, Thomas Hartwell." The driver nodded. "Tom Hartwell's place is about 5 miles out of town. Maybe he got held up with ranch work." Sarah felt worried. What if something was wrong? What if Thomas changed his mind? She picked up her bag. It was heavy, but not too heavy. Everything she owned was inside it. 2 dresses, some underclothes, a few books, and her mother's gold ring. She walked toward the main street. There were several shops, a general store, a saloon, a church at the end of the street. People looked at her as she walked by. She knew she looked different. Her dress was plain and old, her shoes were worn. She tried to stand up straight and look confident. Sarah went into the general store. A bell rang when she opened the door. Inside it smelled like coffee and soap and leather. Shelves lined the walls. They were full of goods, flour, sugar, tools, fabric, and many other things. A woman behind the counter smiled at her. She was middle-aged with gray hair. "Good afternoon," the woman said. "I'm Mrs. Peterson. Can I help you?" "I am looking for Thomas Hartwell," Sarah said. "I am supposed to meet him here." Mrs. Peterson's face changed. She looked surprised and then worried.
"Oh my," she said quietly.
"You must be the young woman from Chicago." "Yes," Sarah said. "Is something wrong?" Before Mrs. Peterson could answer, the door opened. A man walked in. He was tall and had dark hair like the man in the photograph, but he looked different somehow. Harder, colder. "Thomas?" Sarah asked. The man looked at her from head to toe. His eyes were not kind. They were judging her. Sarah felt her face get hot. She could tell he was not happy with what he saw. "You are the woman from Chicago?" he asked. His voice was rough. "Yes," Sarah said. "I am Sarah Mitchell. I came to marry you." Thomas made a sound like a laugh, but it was not a happy laugh. "This is what I get for my money?" he said loudly. Other people in the store turned to look. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. I do not understand," Sarah said. Her voice was small and shaky. "Look at you," Thomas said. He spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Your dress is old and cheap. Your shoes have holes. You look like a beggar. I asked for a wife, not a charity case." Sarah felt like someone hit her in the chest. She could not breathe right. The people in the store were staring at her. Some looked sorry for her. Others whispered to each other. "But your letters," Sarah said. "You said—" "I said I wanted a good woman." Thomas cut her off. "I run a successful ranch. I need a wife who looks the part. Someone pretty and well-dressed. Someone who will make me look good. You are not what I ordered." Mrs. Peterson stepped forward. "Now, Thomas," she said, "that is no way to talk to a lady." "Lady?" Thomas laughed again. "This is no lady. This is a factory girl who thinks she can trick a man into marriage." Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes. She would not cry in front of these people. She would not give Thomas that satisfaction. But inside, her heart was breaking. She had used all her money to come here. She had quit her job. She had nowhere to go. "Please," Sarah said quietly. "I came all this way. I did everything you asked. And I have every right to change my mind." Thomas said, "The deal is off. Find your own way back to Chicago." He turned and walked toward the door. Then he stopped and looked back. "Maybe next time you will be honest about what you look like," he said. Then he left. Sarah stood in the middle of the store. Everyone was looking at her. She felt so ashamed, so stupid. How could she have believed that a man like Thomas would really want her? She was just a poor factory girl with nothing to offer. Mrs. Peterson came around the counter. "Oh, honey," she said softly. "I am so sorry. That was cruel and wrong." Sarah nodded but could not speak. If she opened her mouth, she would start crying. She picked up her bag and walked toward the door. "Wait," Mrs. Peterson called. "Where will you go? Do you have money for a hotel?" Sarah stopped. She turned around. The tears were coming now. She could not stop them. "I have $2, she whispered. "That is all?" The people in the store looked sad for her. But what could they do? She was a stranger. She was not their problem. Sarah walked outside. The sun was getting lower in the sky. Soon it would be dark. She sat down on the wooden steps in front of the store. She put her face in her hands and cried. All her dreams were broken. She had nothing left. She was alone in a strange place with no way to get home. People walked by on the street. Some looked at her with pity. Others just looked away. Sarah felt like the loneliest person in the world. She had made a terrible mistake coming here. But now it was too late to fix it. James Sullivan was loading supplies into his wagon when he heard the loud voices from inside the general store. He stopped what he was doing and listened. Through the open door, he could hear Thomas Hartwell talking in an angry voice. James frowned. Thomas was always loud and mean, but this sounded worse than usual. James was a quiet man. He was 34 years old and had lived in Cedar Ridge all his life. He owned a ranch about 3 miles from town. It was not as big as Thomas's ranch, but it was his own. He worked hard and treated people fairly. Most folks in town liked and respected him. 3 years ago, James had been married to Margaret. She was his childhood sweetheart. They had been happy together. But then Margaret got sick with a fever. James tried everything to save her. He brought doctors from the big city. He prayed every day. But Margaret died anyway. James had been alone ever since. When James heard a woman's voice answering Thomas, he became more curious. The woman sounded scared and upset. James walked closer to the store. He could see through the window now. There was a young woman standing near the counter. She was holding an old bag and looking at Thomas with wide eyes. James watched as Thomas looked the woman up and down like she was a horse he might buy. The woman's face turned red. She looked embarrassed and hurt. James felt angry. No man should treat a woman that way. Then James heard Thomas say terrible things to the woman. He called her a beggar. He said she was not what he ordered. James realized this must be the mail-order bride that people had been talking about. Thomas had been bragging around town that he was getting a wife from back east. When Thomas walked out of the store, James saw the woman's face clearly. She was young, maybe 23 or 24. She had brown hair and blue eyes. Her dress was simple and worn, but clean. She looked like she had been crying. James felt sorry for her. The woman sat down on the steps outside the store. She put her face in her hands and cried. People walked by, but nobody stopped to help. James stood by his wagon and watched. His heart ached for her. He remembered how it felt to be alone and hopeless. James was a shy man. He did not talk to women very often. Since Margaret died, he had kept to himself mostly. But something about this woman made him want to help. Maybe it was because she looked so lost, or maybe it was because Thomas had been so cruel to her. James walked over to where the woman was sitting. She was still crying quietly. Her shoulders shook with each sob. James cleared his throat softly. "Excuse me, miss," he said. The woman looked up. Her eyes were red from crying. She quickly wiped her face with her sleeve. "I am sorry," she said. "I will move if I am in your way." "No," James said. "You are not in my way. I just wanted to. I heard what happened in there. I am very sorry." The woman looked at him carefully. James was tall and had brown hair with some gray at the sides. His face was kind but serious. He wore simple clothes like a working man. His hands were rough from ranch work. "Thank you," the woman said quietly. "That is kind of you to say." James sat down on the step next to her, but not too close. He did not want to scare her. "My name is James Sullivan," he said. "I own a ranch outside of town." "I am Sarah Mitchell," she said. "I came from Chicago to marry Mr. Hartwell. But he does not want me." James nodded. "Thomas Hartwell is not a good man," he said. "What he did to you was wrong. You are better off without him." Sarah laughed, but it was a sad laugh. "Maybe so," she said. "But now I have nowhere to go. I used all my money to come here. I cannot go back to Chicago." James thought for a moment. He was not good with words. He never knew the right thing to say. But he could see that Sarah needed help. She was alone and scared. He could not just walk away. "Do you have a place to stay tonight?" he asked. Sarah shook her head. "I have $2. Is there a cheap hotel?" "There is a boarding house," James said. "But it costs more than $2. They sat in silence for a minute. James was thinking hard. He wanted to help Sarah, but he did not know how. He was just one man living alone on a ranch. What could he do? Finally, James made a decision. "Miss Mitchell," he said, "I would like to offer you a place to stay." Sarah looked at him with surprise. "I do not understand." "At my ranch," James said. "You could stay there until you figure out what to do next. I have extra room. You would be safe there." Sarah stared at him. "You do not even know me," she said. "Why would you help me?" James was quiet for a moment. How could he explain? He had seen her pain, and it reminded him of his own pain when Margaret died. He had seen her courage in not crying in front of Thomas. He had seen her dignity even when she was being humiliated. "Everyone deserves kindness," James said simply, "and you have had a hard day." "But what would people think?" Sarah asked. "A woman staying at your ranch?" "There will be talk," James admitted. "But there is always talk in a small town. I would not do anything to hurt your reputation. You would have your own room. I would treat you with respect." Sarah looked into James's eyes. They were honest eyes, kind eyes, so different from Thomas's cold stare. She had learned to read people during her years in the city. James seemed like a good man. "I could work," Sarah said. "I could cook and clean to earn my keep. I am not looking for charity." James smiled a little. It was the first time he had smiled in months. "That would be fair," he said. "But only if you want to. You are welcome either way." Sarah felt hope for the first time since getting off the stagecoach. This man was offering her safety and kindness when everyone else had turned away. She did not know why he was helping her, but she was grateful. "Yes," Sarah said. "I would like that very much. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan." "Call me James," he said. He stood up and reached for her bag. My wagon is right here. We can go now if you are ready. Sarah nodded and stood up. James picked up her bag like it weighed nothing. He helped her into the wagon seat. His touch was gentle and careful. Sarah had never met a man who was so considerate. As they rode out of town, Sarah looked back at the general store. She thought about Thomas and how mean he had been. She felt hurt and embarrassed still. But she also felt something else. Relief. Maybe James was right. Maybe she was better off without Thomas. James did not talk much as they rode. Sarah was glad, for the quiet. She needed time to think about everything that had happened. The sun was setting behind the mountains. The sky was painted with orange and pink colors. It was beautiful. After a while, James pointed ahead. "There is my place," he said. Sarah saw a small ranch house with a barn and some fences. It looked neat and well cared for. Smoke came from the chimney. There were horses in the pasture and chickens in the yard. It looked like a real home. "It is lovely," Sarah said. James looked pleased. "It is not much," he said, "but it is peaceful." As they got closer to the house, Sarah felt nervous again. What was she doing? She was about to stay at a stranger's house, a man she had just met. But what choice did she have? James seemed kind and she had nowhere else to go. James stopped the wagon near the front door. He jumped down and came around to help Sarah down. She took his hand and stepped to the ground. Her legs still felt shaky from the long trip and the shock of what had happened. "Come inside," James said. "I will show you around." They walked up to the front door. James opened it and let Sarah go in first. The house was simple but clean. There was a kitchen with a wood stove and a table, a living room with a fireplace and 2 chairs. Everything was neat and organized. "The extra bedroom is through here," James said. He led her down a short hallway. It was going to be a nursery. But that did not happen. Sarah heard the sadness in his voice. She wondered what story was behind those words. But she did not ask. Everyone had secrets and sorrows. The room was small but comfortable. There was a bed with a quilt, a dresser, and a window that looked out at the mountains. It was the nicest room Sarah had ever had to herself. "This is perfect," Sarah said. "Thank you so much." James nodded. "I will let you get settled," he said. "There is water for washing in the kitchen, and I will cook supper soon." "Let me cook," Sarah said quickly. "Please, I want to help." James looked at her for a moment. Then he smiled again. "If you want to," he said, "that would be nice." As James left her alone in the room, Sarah sat down on the bed. She could not believe how much her life had changed in one day. This morning she had been excited about meeting her future husband. Tonight she was staying with a stranger who had shown her more kindness than anyone ever had. Sarah looked out the window at the darkening sky. She did not know what would happen tomorrow or next week. But for the first time since stepping off that stagecoach, she felt safe. James had given her shelter when she had nowhere to turn. She would not forget that kindness. Sarah woke up early the next morning. The sun was just coming up over the mountains. She had slept better than she had in weeks. The bed was comfortable and the house was quiet. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then she remembered everything that had happened yesterday. She got dressed quickly and went to the kitchen. James was already there. He was making coffee at the stove. He looked up when she came in. "Good morning," he said. "I hope you slept well." "Very well. Thank you," Sarah said. "You are up early." "Ranch work starts early," James said. "There are animals to feed and chores to do. But you can sleep longer if you want." "No," Sarah said firmly. "I want to help. I told you I would work for my keep." James poured 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Sarah. "You do not have to work," he said. "You are welcome here either way." Sarah took the coffee and wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I need to work," she said. "I cannot just sit around doing nothing. That would make me feel worse." James nodded. He understood. He had felt the same way after Margaret died. Work helped keep the sadness away. What needs to be done? Sarah asked. James thought for a moment. Well, I need to check on the cattle this morning. The chickens need feeding. There is always mending to do. And the vegetable garden needs weeding. I can do all of those things, Sarah said. Except maybe the cattle. I do not know much about cows. James smiled. The cattle are my job, he said. But everything else would be a big help. After they finished their coffee, James showed Sarah around the ranch. The chicken coop was behind the house. There were about 20 chickens pecking around in the dirt. James showed her where the feed was kept. Just throw handfuls on the ground, he said. They will find it. Sarah scattered the grain and watched the chickens run to get it. They made happy clucking sounds. She had never been this close to chickens before. In Chicago, all her food came from stores. Next, James showed her the vegetable garden. It was bigger than Sarah had expected. There were rows of beans, corn, carrots, and other vegetables, but weeds were growing everywhere. Margaret used to take care of this, James said quietly. I am not very good with gardens. Sarah could hear the sadness in his voice when he talked about Margaret. She wondered what kind of woman Margaret had been. She must have been special to make James love her so much. I will take care of it now, Sarah said. I like gardens. We had a small one when I was little, before my father died. James looked grateful. That would be wonderful, he said. James saddled his horse and rode out to check the cattle. Sarah went back to the garden. She rolled up her sleeves and started pulling weeds. The morning was cool and pleasant. Birds sang in the trees nearby. Sarah found the work peaceful. As she worked, Sarah thought about her life. Yesterday at this time, she had been on the stagecoach getting ready to meet Thomas. She had been so nervous and excited. Now Thomas seemed like a bad dream. This place felt more real somehow. Sarah worked in the garden all morning. By the time James came back, she had cleared 3 whole rows. Her back ached and her hands were dirty, but she felt good about what she had done. Look at that, James said when he saw the garden. You got more done in one morning than I did all last month. Sarah felt proud. It had been a long time since anyone had praised her work. For lunch, Sarah cooked eggs from the chickens and vegetables from the garden. James said it was the best meal he had eaten in months. Sarah could tell he was not just being polite. He really meant it. In the afternoon, Sarah found a basket of clothes that needed mending. She sat on the front porch with needle and thread. James was fixing a broken fence nearby. They worked quietly, but it was a comfortable quiet. May I ask you something? Sarah said after a while. Of course, James said. Why are you helping me? You do not know anything about me. I could be a bad person. James stopped working and looked at her. Are you a bad person? He asked. Sarah thought about it. I do not think so, she said. I try to be good, I work hard, I do not lie or steal. That is what I thought, James said. I can usually tell about people. And besides, Thomas treated you badly. That told me a lot about both of you. What do you mean? Thomas showed his true character yesterday, James said. He was cruel to you in front of everyone. A good man would not do that even if he changed his mind about marrying you. Sarah had not thought about it that way. So you helped me because Thomas was mean? Partly, James said. But also because you needed help. And because you have dignity. You did not beg or make a scene. You just sat there and cried quietly. That took courage. Sarah felt tears come to her eyes. No one had ever called her courageous before. That evening, Sarah cooked dinner. She made stew with beef and vegetables. She also baked bread in James's oven. The smell filled the whole house. This is amazing, James said as they ate. I have not had bread this good since Margaret died. My mother taught me to cook, Sarah said. She said a woman should know how to make a home comfortable. She taught you well, James said. After dinner, they sat on the front porch. The sun was setting behind the mountains again. The sky was full of beautiful colors. Sarah had never seen sunsets like this in Chicago. It is so peaceful here, Sarah said. I love this time of day, James said. After all the work is done, time to just sit and think. What do you think about? Sarah asked. James was quiet for a moment. Lots of things, he said. The ranch, the weather, Margaret sometimes, what I need to do tomorrow. Do you miss her very much? Sarah asked softly. Every day, James said. We were together since we were children. I never thought I would have to live without her. Sarah felt sorry for him. She had never been in love like that. She wondered what it would be like to care about someone so much. She was lucky to have you, Sarah said. James looked at her with surprise. Why do you say that? Because you are kind, Sarah said. You help people who need help. You work hard. You loved her completely. Not everyone finds that. James did not know what to say. He had not thought of himself as lucky. Since Margaret died, he had felt only sad and alone. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out. Sarah felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt like she belonged somewhere. This ranch, this quiet man, this simple life, it all felt right somehow. James, Sarah said, I want you to know something. Whatever happens, I will never forget what you did for me yesterday. You saved me when I had nowhere to turn. You do not need to thank me, James said. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, Sarah said firmly. Not anyone. Most people walked right by me. You were the only one who stopped to help. James felt something warm in his chest. He had not felt that feeling in a long time. It was nice to be appreciated. It was nice to have someone to talk to in the evening. Over the next few days, Sarah settled into a routine. She woke up early and made breakfast. She fed the chickens and collected eggs. She worked in the garden and cooked meals. She mended clothes and cleaned the house. James was amazed by how much she got done. The house had not been this clean since Margaret died. The garden was free of weeds and growing well. Even the chickens seemed happier, but it was not just the work that made James happy. It was having Sarah there. She hummed while she worked. She asked questions about the ranch and really listened to his answers. She made the house feel alive again. Sarah was happy too. For the first time in her life, she felt useful. In Chicago, she had been just one of many factory workers. Here, her work mattered. James needed her help, and she could provide it. One evening, as they sat on the porch, Sarah said something that surprised James. I am glad Thomas rejected me, she said. James looked at her with shock. Really? Yes, Sarah said. If he had married me, I would never have met you. I would never have found this place. I think maybe Thomas did me a favor. James smiled. Maybe he did, he said. But he still should not have been so cruel. No, Sarah agreed. But sometimes good things come from bad things. My father used to say that every cloud has a silver lining. James had never thought about it that way. Maybe Margaret's death and Sarah's rejection by Thomas had both been terrible things. But they had led to this moment, sitting on the porch with Sarah, feeling peaceful and content. Your father sounds like a wise man, James said. He was, Sarah said. I miss him, but I think he would be happy to see me now. He always worried about me living alone in the city. That night, as Sarah got ready for bed, she looked out her window at the stars. They were so bright here, away from the city lights. She made a wish on the brightest star she could see. She wished that she could stay here forever. She wished that James would let her be part of his life. She was starting to care about him in a way that surprised her. He was so different from Thomas, so gentle and considerate. But Sarah knew she could not stay forever. James was still in love with Margaret. He was just being kind to someone who needed help. Someday, he would want his privacy back. Someday, she would have to figure out what to do with her life. But for now, she was happy. She had found a place where she belonged. She had found work that mattered. And she had found a friend who treated her with respect and kindness. Maybe that was enough. Maybe she was asking too much, to want more than that. But as Sarah fell asleep that night, she could not help hoping that maybe, just maybe, this could be her real home. 2 months had passed since Sarah first arrived at James's ranch. Summer was ending and fall was beginning. The leaves on the trees were starting to change colors. The air was getting cooler at night. Sarah had found her rhythm on the ranch. Every morning, she got up before sunrise. She made coffee and started breakfast while James went out to milk the cow. They ate together and talked about what needed to be done that day. Then James would ride out to check on the cattle, and Sarah would begin her work around the house and garden. The garden was doing very well now. Sarah had learned which vegetables grew best in Montana soil. She had canned many jars of vegetables for the winter. The cellar was full of potatoes, carrots, and onions. James said they would have enough food to last through the cold months. Sarah had also learned to help with some of the ranch work. She could feed the horses and clean their stalls. She had learned to milk the cow when James was busy. She even helped fix fences, holding boards while James hammered nails. "You are getting to be a real ranch woman," James told her one afternoon. They were working together to repair a gate that the cattle had broken. Sarah smiled. "I like the work," she said. "It feels good to use my hands for something useful." "You are more help than most of the hired men I have had," James said. "They usually just wanted to do the easy jobs." Sarah felt proud when James said things like that. She had never been good at anything special before. In Chicago, she was just another factory worker. Here, she felt like she mattered. But it was not just during the day that Sarah and James spent time together. In the evenings, after all the work was done, they would sit on the porch and talk. These conversations were the best part of Sarah's day. James was not a man who talked a lot, but when he did talk, Sarah listened carefully. He told her about growing up on a ranch. His father had taught him everything about raising cattle and horses. His mother had died when he was young, so his father had raised him alone. "That must have been hard," Sarah said. "Not having a mother." "It was," James said. "But my father was a good man. He taught me to work hard and treat people fairly. He said those were the most important things a man could learn." Sarah told James about her life in Chicago. She had lived there since she was 16. Her parents had died when she was young, like James's mother. She had no brothers or sisters. She had worked in factories and lived in boarding houses with other girls. "It was lonely sometimes," Sarah admitted. "I always dreamed of having a family, a real home. That is why I answered Thomas's letter." "Thomas does not deserve a woman like you," James said. "He is a fool." Sarah felt her heart beat faster when James said things like that. She was starting to have feelings for James that she had never expected. But she tried to hide those feelings. James was still mourning his wife. He was just being kind to Sarah. One evening, James surprised Sarah by asking about her dreams. "What did you want to be when you were little?" he asked. Sarah thought about it. "I wanted to be a teacher," she said. "I love to read and learn new things. But my family had no money for me to go to school long enough." "You still could be a teacher," James said. "There is a school in Cedar Ridge. The teacher is getting old. She might retire soon." Sarah laughed. "I do not think the town would want someone like me teaching their children. I am the woman who came to marry Thomas Hartwell and got rejected." "That is not who you are," James said firmly. "You are Sarah Mitchell. You are smart and kind and hard-working. Anyone would be lucky to have you teach their children." Sarah felt tears come to her eyes. James always made her feel like she was worth something. No one had ever believed in her like that before. James told Sarah about his dreams too. He and Margaret had planned to have children and raise them on the ranch. They had wanted to expand the ranch and maybe raise horses as well as cattle. "Do you still want those things?" Sarah asked. James was quiet for a long time. "I thought I did not," he said finally. "After Margaret died, I thought my life was over. But lately, I do not know. Maybe I am not too old to have dreams again." Sarah wondered if she was part of those new dreams, but she did not ask. She was afraid of the answer. As the weeks passed, Sarah noticed that James was changing. He smiled more often. He talked more at dinner. Sometimes she caught him watching her while she worked. When their hands touched while doing chores together, he did not pull away quickly like he used to. One day, James came back from town with a surprise for Sarah. It was a book of poetry. "I saw this at the general store," he said. "Mrs. Peterson said you might like it." Sarah was so happy she almost cried. She had not had a new book in months. "Thank you," she said. "This is wonderful." That evening, Sarah read some of the poems, out loud while they sat on the porch. James listened carefully. He was not much of a reader himself, but he liked hearing Sarah's voice. "You have a beautiful voice," James said. "You should read to children. You would make a good teacher." Sarah blushed. "You are just being kind." "No," James said. "I mean it. You have a gift." Another evening, James asked Sarah about her mother. "What was she like?" he said. Sarah smiled. She was gentle and patient. She could make anyone feel better when they were sad. She used to sing while she cooked. The whole house would smell like bread and sound like music. "She sounds wonderful," James said. "She was," Sarah said. "She would have liked you. She always said the best men were the quiet ones who worked hard and treated women with respect." James felt his face get warm. "What about your father?" "He was a dreamer," Sarah said. "He always thought something better was coming. Even when times were hard, he stayed hopeful. He used to tell me that if I was brave enough to take chances, good things would happen." "He was right," James said. "You were brave to come west, and good things did happen." Sarah looked at James. In the dim light from the house, his face looked younger. His eyes were warm and kind. "Yes," she said softly. "Good things did happen. They were sitting closer together than usual." Sarah could smell James's soap and the leather of his work clothes. She wanted to reach out and touch his hand, but she did not dare. James was thinking the same thing. He wanted to take Sarah's hand and tell her how much she meant to him. But he felt guilty. Was he being unfaithful to Margaret's memory? Was it wrong to have feelings for another woman? One night there was a bad storm. The wind howled around the house and rain pounded on the roof. Sarah had always been afraid of thunderstorms. She lay in bed listening to the thunder and trying not to be scared. Then she heard a crash from outside. She got up and looked out the window. A big tree branch had fallen across the yard. She went to the kitchen and found James there. He was looking out the window too. "That was a big one," he said. "I hope it did not hit the barn." Another flash of lightning lit up the sky. Sarah jumped and made a small sound of fear. "Are you afraid of storms?" James asked. Sarah nodded, feeling embarrassed. "I know it is silly, but they have always scared me." "It is not silly," James said. "Lots of people are afraid of storms." They stood by the window together, watching the lightning. When thunder crashed overhead, Sarah moved closer to James without thinking. He put his arm around her shoulders. "It is all right," he said softly. "You are safe here." Sarah felt safe in James's arms. She had never felt so protected. She could feel his heart beating through his shirt. She wanted to stay like this forever. James felt Sarah trembling against him. She was so small and brave. She worked so hard every day and never complained. She had been through so much pain, yet she still had hope and kindness. He found himself caring about her more than he had thought possible. When the storm finally passed, they stepped apart. Both of them felt awkward but also happy. "Thank you," Sarah said quietly, "for making me feel safe." "Always," James said. The word came out before he could stop it. They looked at each other for a long moment. There was something new in the air between them, something that had been growing for weeks. But then James stepped back. "We should get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow will be a busy day cleaning up after the storm." Sarah nodded, but she felt disappointed. For a moment she had thought James might say something more, might tell her how he felt. The next day, they worked together to clean up the storm. Damage. The fallen branch had missed the barn, but it had crushed part of the chicken coop. They spent the morning rebuilding it. As they worked, Sarah noticed that James kept looking at her. When she smiled at him, he smiled back. When she handed him nails, their fingers touched and he did not pull away. "Sarah," James said as they finished, "the repairs. I want you to know something." Sarah's heart began to beat fast. "What is it?" "You have made this place feel like home again," James said. "I had forgotten what that felt like." "You have given me a home," Sarah said. "I will never—" "Forget that." They stood facing each other in the afternoon sun. James wanted to tell Sarah that he was falling in love with her, but the words would not come. He was still afraid. Afraid of betraying Margaret's memory. Afraid that Sarah might not feel the same way. Afraid of getting hurt again. Sarah wanted to tell James that she loved him, that she wanted to stay with him forever. But she was afraid too. Afraid that he would send her away if he knew how she felt. Afraid that she was just a temporary comfort to a lonely man. So they said nothing. But both of them knew that something had changed between them. Winter came early to Montana that year. By November, snow was falling almost every day. The wind was cold and sharp. Sarah had never lived through a winter like this. In Chicago, winter was hard, but she had always lived in buildings with other people. Here on the ranch, it was just her and James against the cold. James worked harder than ever during the winter months. He had to break ice on the water troughs every morning so the animals could drink. He had to carry hay to the cattle every day. The work was hard and dangerous in the snow and ice. Sarah did her part too. She kept the house warm and cooked hot meals. She mended clothes and blankets. She made sure James had warm food waiting when he came in from the cold. The canned vegetables and preserved meat she had prepared in the fall kept them fed. On the worst days, when the wind was howling and the snow was too deep, James could not leave the house. He and Sarah would sit by the fire and talk. Sometimes, Sarah would read from her book of poetry. Sometimes they would just sit quietly and listen to the storm outside. These were good times for both of them. They felt close and comfortable together, but they still had not talked about their feelings. Both of them were afraid to change what they had. One morning in December, Sarah woke up feeling sick. Her head hurt, and she felt hot all over. She tried to get up to make breakfast, but she was too dizzy. She lay back down and pulled the blankets over her head. James came to the kitchen looking for his coffee. When he did not find Sarah there, he knocked on her bedroom door. "Sarah?" he called. "Are you all right?" "I do not feel well," Sarah said through the door. Her voice sounded weak and shaky. James opened the door and came in. Sarah was curled up in bed. Her face was red with fever and she was shivering. "You are sick," James said. He was worried. He had seen people get very sick in the winter. Sometimes they did not get better. "I will be fine," Sarah said. "Just give me a little while." But Sarah was not fine. As the day went on, she got worse. Her fever went higher. She could barely drink water. She coughed so hard it hurt to listen to her. James was scared. The nearest doctor was in town, but the snow was too deep for a horse to get through. Even if he could get to town, he could not leave Sarah alone. She was too sick. James had nursed his wife Margaret through her final illness. He remembered what the doctor had told him to do. He got cool cloths and put them on Sarah's forehead to bring down the fever. He made her drink water even when she did not want to. He sat by her bed and watched her all night. For 3 days, Sarah's fever burned. She talked in her sleep, but the words did not make sense. Sometimes she called for her mother. Sometimes she seemed to think she was still in Chicago. James stayed with her every moment. He barely slept. On the 4th day, Sarah's fever broke. She opened her eyes and looked around the room. James was sitting in a chair next to her bed. He looked tired and worried. "James?" Sarah said. Her voice was weak but clear. "Thank God," James said. "You are back with me." "How long was I sick?" Sarah asked. 4 days, James said. "I was so afraid I was going to lose you." Sarah saw tears in James's eyes. She had never seen him cry before. She reached out and took his hand. "I am all right now," she said. Thank You for taking care of me." James held her hand tight. "I could not bear to lose you too," he said. "Not after Margaret." Sarah felt her heart skip. James had said too. Did that mean he cared about her the same way he had cared about Margaret? "You saved my life," Sarah said. "You saved mine first," James said. "When you came here, you brought this house back to life. You brought me back to life." They looked at each other for a long moment. Sarah wanted to tell James that she loved him. James wanted to tell Sarah the same thing, but both of them were still afraid. Sarah was weak for many days after her fever broke. James brought her meals in bed and helped her walk around the room. He read to her from newspapers he had saved. He told her stories about the ranch and the animals. "Tell me about Margaret," Sarah said one day. She had wanted to ask this question for months. James was quiet for a while. "Are you sure you want to know?" he asked. "Yes," Sarah said. "I want to understand who she was." James told Sarah about meeting Margaret when they were both children. Their families had neighboring ranches. They grew up together and fell in love when they were teenagers. They got married when James was 20 and Margaret was 18. "She was beautiful," James said. "She had golden hair and green eyes. She was always laughing. She could make friends with anyone." Sarah felt a pain in her chest. How could she compete with a woman like that? "She sounds wonderful," Sarah said. "She was," James said. "But she was also fragile. She got sick easily. She was afraid of thunder and mice and spiders. I always had to take care of her." Sarah thought about that. She was not fragile. She was not afraid of mice or spiders. She worked hard and did not need to be taken care of all the time. Maybe that was good. Maybe that was what James needed now. "Do you think she would have liked me?" Sarah asked. James smiled. "She would have loved you," he said. "She always wanted a sister. She would have been so happy to have a friend like you." But as Sarah got better, trouble started coming from outside the ranch. Thomas Hartwell had been watching James's place all winter. He saw that Sarah was still living there. He was angry and jealous. Thomas had not been able to find another wife after rejecting Sarah. The other women who answered his letters changed their minds when they heard how he had treated Sarah. Word had spread even back east that Thomas Hartwell was not a good man to marry. Thomas was also having money problems. His ranch was not doing as well as James's ranch. He owed money to several people in town. He was drinking more and becoming meaner. One day in town, Thomas started talking to other men about James and Sarah. "It is not right," Thomas said loudly, at the saloon. "That woman is living in sin with James Sullivan. They are not married, but they are living like they are." Some of the men agreed with Thomas. Others thought it was none of their business. But the talk started spreading around town. Mrs. Peterson from the general store heard the gossip. She was worried about Sarah. She liked Sarah and thought she was a good woman. But she knew that gossip could ruin a person in a small town. Tio. Next time James came to town for supplies, Mrs. Peterson pulled him aside. "James," she said quietly, "there is talk about you and Sarah. Thomas Hartwell is saying bad things." James felt angry. "What kind of things?" "He is saying that Sarah is living with you as your wife, but you are not married. He is saying it is not proper." James's face got red. "Thomas Hartwell has no right to talk about Sarah that way. She is a good woman." "I know that," Mrs. Peterson said, "but not everyone does. Some people are starting to believe what Thomas is saying." James felt sick. He had been so worried about Sarah's feelings and his own feelings that he had not thought about what other people might say. In a small town like Cedar Ridge, reputation was very important. If people thought badly of Sarah, she would have no friends. She would be alone even when she was with other people. When James got home, he told Sarah about the gossip. Sarah listened with a heavy heart. "I knew this might happen," Sarah said. "A woman cannot live with a man without people talking." "I do not care what they say about me," James said, "but I care what they say about you. You do not deserve to be talked about badly." Maybe I should leave, Sarah said. The words hurt her to say, but she felt she had to offer. No, James said quickly. I do not want you to leave. This is your home now. But if people think I am a bad woman, you are not a bad woman, James said firmly. Anyone who knows you knows that. The problem is not with you. The problem is with small-minded people who have nothing better to do than gossip. But Sarah could see that James was worried. She was worried too. She had finally found a place where she belonged. She did not want to lose it because of gossip and lies. That night Sarah lay in bed thinking about what to do. She loved James and she loved living on the ranch, but she did not want to cause trouble for him. James was a respected man in the Yale community. He did business with people in town. He needed their good opinion. Sarah thought about leaving. She could go to another town and start over, but the idea made her heart break. She had been alone for so long before coming here. She did not want to be alone again. James was thinking the same thoughts in his own room. He cared about Sarah more than he had ever expected to care about anyone again. But he also knew that reputation was important, especially for a woman. If people thought badly of Sarah, it would be hard for her to have any kind of life in Cedar Ridge. There was one solution to the problem. James and Sarah could get married. That would stop all the gossip, but James was not sure he was ready for marriage. He still felt like he was betraying Margaret's memory, and he did not know if Sarah loved him or just felt grateful to him. Sarah was thinking about marriage too. She loved James and would be happy to marry him, but she did not want him to marry her just to stop gossip. She wanted him to marry her because he loved her and wanted to spend his life with her. Neither of them slept much that night. They both knew that something had to change. The comfortable life they had built together was being threatened by the cruel words of Thomas Hartwell and the gossip of small-town people. In the morning, they were both quiet at breakfast. The gossip about James and Sarah continued to spread through Cedar Ridge like a wildfire. Every time someone came to the general store or the saloon, they heard more stories. Some people said Sarah was a fallen woman from the city. Others said James had forgotten his dead wife too quickly. Thomas Hartwell made sure the talk never stopped. Sarah began to notice the change when she went to town with James for supplies. Women who had been friendly before now looked away when they saw her. Some men stared at her in a way that made her feel uncomfortable. Children were told not to talk to her. One day at the general store, Sarah was looking at fabric when she heard two women talking behind her. I cannot believe James Sullivan is living with that woman, one woman said. And her not even his wife. She came here to marry Thomas Hartwell, the other woman said. When he would not have her, she moved right in with James. What kind of decent woman does that? Poor Margaret must be turning over in her grave, the first woman said. James promised to love her forever. Now look at him. Sarah felt her face burn with shame. She put down the fabric and walked quickly toward the door. But the women were not finished. I heard she worked in a factory back east, one of them said loudly. You know what kind of girls work in those places. No wonder Thomas did not want her. Sarah ran out of the store with tears in her eyes. James was loading supplies into the wagon. He saw her face and knew something was wrong. What happened? He asked. Nothing, Sarah said. But James could see she was upset. On the ride home, Sarah was very quiet. James tried to talk to her, but she only gave short answers. That night at dinner, she barely ate anything. Sarah, James said, please tell me what is wrong. Sarah looked at him with sad eyes. They hate me, she said quietly. The women in town hate me. They think I am a bad woman. What women? James asked, but he already knew. Sarah told him what she had heard at the store. James felt angry and ashamed. He was angry at the women for hurting Sarah. He was ashamed that he had let this happen to her. They do not know you, James said. If they knew you, they would see what a good person you are. But they do not want to know me, Sarah said. They have already decided what kind of person I am. James knew Sarah was right. In small towns, once people made up their minds about someone, it was hard to change those minds. The next Sunday was the monthly church social. James usually went to these gatherings. It was a way for people in the community to visit with each other, but this time, he was not sure if he and Sarah should go. "Maybe I should stay home," Sarah said when James mentioned the social. "No," James said firmly. "You have every right to be there. You have done nothing wrong." Sarah was not sure. She did not want to face all those people who had been talking about her. But James was determined. He would not let gossip keep Sarah locked away like a prisoner. On Sunday, James and Sarah dressed in their best clothes and went to the church social. When they walked into the church hall, the room got very quiet. Everyone turned to look at them. Sarah felt her face turn red. She wanted to turn around and leave. But James took her arm and walked with her into the room. Mrs. Peterson came over to greet them. She was one of the few people who was still friendly to Sarah. "Hello, James." "Hello, Sarah," she said warmly. "I'm glad you came." "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson," Sarah said quietly. But most of the other people were not friendly. The women stayed away from Sarah. The men looked at her in ways that made her uncomfortable. Sarah felt like everyone was judging her. Then Thomas Hartwell arrived. He had been drinking and he was in a mean mood. He saw James and Sarah standing together and walked over to them. "Well, look what we have here," Thomas said loudly. Everyone in the room could hear him. James Sullivan and his woman. James felt his temper rising. "Sarah is a lady," he said. "You will treat her with respect." Thomas laughed. "Lady? She is living with you without marriage. That does not sound like a lady to me." "Be careful what you say, Thomas," James warned. "Or what?" Thomas said. "Everyone knows the truth. She came here to marry me, but I had better taste than to take damaged goods. So she moved in with you instead." Sarah felt like Thomas had slapped her. She started to move toward the door, but James stepped in front of Thomas. "That is enough," James said. His voice was quiet but dangerous. "You know what I think?" Thomas said, getting louder. "I think she was not pure when she came here from Chicago. I think that is why I did not want her. And now you are getting what I would not take." That was too much for James. Before anyone could stop him, he grabbed Thomas by the shirt and pushed him against the wall. "Take that back," James said. "Take it back right now." "I will not take back the truth," Thomas said with a mean smile. James hit Thomas in the face. Thomas fell to the floor. The whole room was silent except for the sound of Thomas groaning. James stood over Thomas and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Listen to me, all of you," James said. "Sarah Mitchell is the finest woman I have ever known. She is kind and hardworking and honest. She came to this town expecting to marry a man who treated her cruelly. I offered her a place to stay until she could figure out what to do. She has worked hard for everything she has gotten. She has asked for nothing but a chance to live with dignity." James looked around the room at all the faces staring at him. "Any of you who want to judge her should look at your own lives first," James continued. "How many of you have helped someone who needed help? How many of you have opened your homes to a stranger? Sarah has more goodness in her little finger than Thomas Hartwell has in his whole body." Thomas was getting to his feet, wiping blood from his nose. "Pretty words," he said, "but she is still living with you in sin." "And whose fault is that?" James asked. "You left her stranded with nowhere to go. What was she supposed to do? Sleep in the street?" James turned to face the whole room again. "If any of you have a problem with Sarah staying at my ranch, you can take it up with me. But I will not stand here and let anyone insult her." With that, James took Sarah's arm and they walked out of the church hall. Behind them, people began talking all at once. On the ride home, Sarah was crying quietly. "I am sorry that happened," James said. "You should not have hit him," Sarah said. "Now people will think you are violent too." "I could not let him say those things about you," James said. "I could not just stand there and listen to him lie." "But now everyone will be talking about the fight," Sarah said. "It will make everything worse." James knew Sarah was probably right, but he did not care. He could not let Thomas hurt Sarah with his cruel words. That night, they sat on the porch, even though it was cold. James built a fire in the outdoor fire pit to keep them warm. "James," Sarah said, "I need to ask you something." "What is it?" "When you defended me today, you said I was the finest woman you had ever known. Did you mean that, or were you just angry at Thomas?" James looked at her in the firelight. Her face was serious and beautiful. "I meant every word," James said. "You are the finest woman I have ever known." "Even compared to Margaret?" Sarah asked quietly. James was quiet for a long time. This was the question he had been afraid to answer, even to himself. "Margaret was a good woman," James said finally. "I loved her very much. But you and Margaret are different people. You both have your own kinds of goodness." "But do you still love her more than you could ever love anyone else?" Sarah asked. This was the question that had been in her heart for months. James looked into Sarah's eyes. He knew it was time to tell her the truth. "I will always love Margaret," James said. "She was my first love. But Sarah, what I feel for you is not less than what I felt for Margaret. It is different, but it is just as real and just as strong." Sarah felt her heart start beating faster. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I love you," James said. "I tried not to. I felt guilty about it. I thought I was betraying Margaret's memory. But I cannot help how I feel. I love you, Sarah. I love your strength and your kindness. I love the way you hum while you work. I love how safe you make me feel. I love that you are not afraid of hard work or hard times." Sarah felt tears come to her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I love you too," she said. "I have loved you for months, but I was afraid to tell you. I thought you could never love anyone the way you loved Margaret." "I do not love you the way I loved Margaret," James said. "I love you the way I love Sarah. You are your own person, with your own place in my heart." They moved closer together on the porch. James took Sarah's hands in his. "Sarah," he said, "I know this is not the most romantic place or time, but I have to ask you something." "What is it?" "Will you marry me?" James asked. "Not because of the gossip or to make people stop talking, but because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Sarah felt like her heart might burst with happiness. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." James leaned forward and kissed Sarah gently. It was the first time they had kissed, and it felt like a promise of all the love and happiness that was to come. When they pulled apart, Sarah was smiling. "There is just one thing I need to know," she said. "What is that?" "Are you sure you want to marry me and not just asking because you think you have to?" James smiled back at her. "Sarah Mitchell," he said, "I would ask you to marry me if we were the only two people left in the world and there was no one to gossip about us." Spring came to Montana with a rush of warm air and melting snow. The winter had been long and hard, but now everything was coming back to life. Green grass was growing in the fields. Flowers were blooming in Sarah's garden. The cattle were happy to be outside again after months in the barn. Sarah woke up every morning with a smile on her face. She and James were engaged to be married. They had told Mrs. Peterson the good news, and she had been very happy for them. The gossip in town had not stopped completely, but Sarah did not care as much anymore. She knew James loved her, and that was all that mattered. They had not set a date for the wedding yet. James wanted to make sure everything was perfect for Sarah. He was planning something special, but he would not tell her what it was. "Just be patient," he said when Sarah asked. "I want this to be a day you will never forget." Sarah was happy to wait. She had waited her whole life to find love like this. A few more weeks would not hurt. As the weather got warmer, James and Sarah spent more time outside together. They would walk around the ranch in the evenings, looking at the animals and planning improvements. James had decided to expand the vegetable garden. Sarah wanted to plant more flowers around the house. One morning, James came in from checking the cattle with a serious look on his face. "Is something wrong?" Sarah asked. "No," James said, "but I need to go into town today. There is some business I have to take care of." "What kind of business?" James smiled mysteriously. The kind that is a surprise. Sarah was curious, but she did not ask more questions. James liked to surprise her, and his surprises were always good ones. While James was in town, Sarah worked in the garden. She was planting beans when she heard a horse coming up the road. She looked up and saw Thomas Hartwell riding toward the house. Sarah felt afraid. She had not seen Thomas since the fight at the church social. His nose was still a little crooked, from where James had hit him. He looked angry and mean. "Where is Sullivan?" Thomas demanded. "He went to town," Sarah said. She tried to keep her voice steady. "Good," Thomas said. "I wanted to talk to you alone." Thomas got off his horse and walked closer to Sarah. She stood up and backed toward the house. "What do you want?" Sarah asked. "I want to make you an offer," Thomas said. "A business offer." "I do not want anything from you," Sarah said. "Hear me out," Thomas said. "I know Sullivan asked you to marry him, but I also know you are just settling for him because I would not have you." Sarah felt angry. "That is not true." "Is it not?" Thomas asked. "Look at him, Sarah. He is older than me. He is poorer than me. His ranch is smaller than mine. You could have done better if you had waited." "James is a better man than you will ever be," Sarah said. Thomas laughed. "Maybe, but I am willing to give you another chance. I have thought about it, and I decided I was too hasty in rejecting you. You're not as pretty as I wanted, but you work hard. That counts for something." Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. "You want to marry me now?" "Yes," Thomas said. "I will give you what you came here for originally. Marriage to a successful rancher. All you have to do is leave Sullivan and come with me." "No," Sarah said firmly. "I would never marry you. Not if you were the last man on earth." Thomas's face got red. "You are making a mistake," he said. "Sullivan does not really love you. He is just lonely. When he gets tired of you, he will throw you out just like I did. James is nothing like you," Sarah said. "He is kind and good and honest." "He is using you," Thomas said. "You cook and clean for him. You work like a servant. Is that the life you want?" "I work because I want to help the man I love," Sarah said, something you would never understand. Thomas got angry when Sarah refused him. He had expected her to be grateful for his offer. He had thought she would jump at the chance to marry him. "You will regret this," Thomas said. "When Sullivan gets tired of you and sends you away, do not come crying to me." "I will never come to you for anything," Sarah said. Thomas got back on his horse. "We will see about that," he said. Then he rode away. Sarah was shaking when James came home. She told him about Thomas's visit. "I am sorry he bothered you," James said. "I should have been here." "It does not matter," Sarah said. "I told him no. I will always tell him no." James held Sarah close. "You never have to worry about Thomas again," he said. "After we are married, he will have no reason to bother you." "When will we be married?" Sarah asked. "I do not want to wait much longer." James smiled. "Soon," he said. "Very soon." The next day was exactly 1 year since Sarah had first arrived in Cedar Ridge. James had remembered the date and planned something special. "Sarah," he said after breakfast, "I want to show you something. Will you come for a ride with me?" Sarah was curious. James had been acting mysterious all morning. "Of course," she said. James saddled 2 horses and they rode out into the hills behind the ranch. Sarah had never been this far from the house before. The land was beautiful here. Rolling hills covered with grass and wildflowers. Mountains in Nairi, the distance with snow still on the peaks. They rode for about an hour until they came to a meadow at the top of a hill. From here they could see the whole valley spread out below them. The ranch looked small and peaceful in the distance. Cedar Ridge was just a tiny cluster of buildings. "This is beautiful," Sarah said. "I have never seen anything like it." "This meadow is special to me," James said quietly. "It is where I scattered Margaret's ashes." Sarah felt surprised and a little uncomfortable. Why had James brought her to this place? James saw her expression and quickly explained. I did not bring you here to make you sad, he said. I brought you here because I wanted to talk to you about Margaret and about us. They sat down on the soft grass. The sun was warm on their faces and a gentle breeze moved through the wildflowers. Sarah, James said, I loved Margaret with all my heart. She was part of my life for so long that I thought I could never love anyone else. When she died, I thought my heart died too. Sarah listened quietly. She could hear the love and sadness in James's voice when he talked about his first wife. But then you came into my life, James continued. At first, I just wanted to help you, because you needed help. But as time went on, I realized you were bringing something back to life in me that I thought was gone forever. James took Sarah's hands in his. I want you to know that loving you does not mean I love Margaret any less. Love is not something that gets smaller when you share it. It gets bigger. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Are you sure? She asked. Are you sure you are not just settling for me because you are lonely? Look at me, James said. Sarah looked into his warm brown eyes. I am not settling for you, Sarah. I am choosing you. I am choosing you because you make me laugh. I am choosing you because you are brave and strong. I am choosing you because when I think about the future, I cannot imagine it without you in it. James reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Sarah's heart started beating fast. I went to town yesterday to get this, James said. He opened the box and inside was a simple gold ring with a small diamond. It is not fancy, but it is yours if you want it, Sarah gasped. The ring was beautiful. She had never owned anything so lovely. Margaret would want me to be happy, James said. She would want both of us to be happy. I think she would love you, Sarah. I think she would be glad that I found someone like you to share my life with. James got down on one knee in the meadow full of wildflowers. Sarah Mitchell, he said, I love you more than I ever thought I could love anyone again. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and my partner and the mother of my children? Sarah was crying happy tears now. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you. James slipped the ring onto Sarah's finger. It fit perfectly. Then he stood up and kissed her while the wind blew through the grass around them. When? Sarah asked when they pulled apart. Next week, James said. If that is all right with you. Next week? Sarah was surprised. So soon? I have already talked to the preacher, James said. He will marry us next Saturday if we want. I'm tired of waiting, Sarah. I want you to be my wife. I want everyone to know that you belong with me. Sarah felt excited and nervous at the same time. But I do not have a wedding dress, she said. James smiled. Mrs. Peterson is making you one, he said. She has been working on it for 2 weeks. She said every bride deserves a beautiful dress. Sarah could not believe James had planned all of this. You thought of everything, she said. I tried to, James said. I want this day to be perfect for you. They stayed in the meadow for a long time, talking about their wedding and their future together. James told Sarah he wanted to expand the ranch and maybe raise horses as well as cattle. Sarah said she wanted to start a school for the local children. We could build a little schoolhouse right here on the ranch, James said. The children from the neighboring farms could come here to learn. Do you really think people would trust me to teach their children? Sarah asked. Once they get to know you, they will, James said. Give them time, people will see what a good person you are. As the sun began to set, they rode back to the ranch. Sarah kept looking at her ring. She could not believe she was really engaged to be married. All her dreams were coming true. That night, Sarah wrote a letter to the one friend she had kept in touch with from Chicago. She told her about James and about her new life in Montana. Saturday morning came with bright sunshine and a warm breeze. Sarah woke up early, too excited to sleep anymore. This was her wedding day. In a few hours, she would be Mrs. James Sullivan. Sarah looked out her bedroom window at the mountains in the distance. The snow had melted and everything was green and fresh. It was a perfect day for a wedding. Mrs. Peterson arrived early to help Sarah get ready. She brought the wedding dress and some flowers from her own garden. "These are for your hair," Mrs. Peterson said, showing Sarah the small white flowers. Every bride should have flowers in her hair. Sarah put on her wedding dress carefully. It fit perfectly. The blue fabric made her eyes look even more blue. The white flowers embroidered on the skirt caught the light when she moved. "You look beautiful," Mrs. Peterson said. "James is a lucky man." Sarah looked at herself in the mirror. She had never looked so pretty. But more than that, she looked happy. She was glowing with joy and love. Mrs. Peterson helped Sarah fix her hair. She braided it with ribbons and tucked the small white flowers throughout the braid. Then she stepped back to look at her work. "Perfect," Mrs. Peterson said. "You look like an angel." James was getting ready in the barn. Some of the neighbor men had come to help him. They were all dressed in their best clothes for the wedding. "You nervous?" asked Mr. Johnson, who owned the farm next to James's ranch. "A little," James admitted. "I want everything to be perfect for Sarah." "It will be," said another neighbor. "Anyone can see how much you two love each other." James put on his best suit. It was dark blue and made him look handsome and dignified. He had gotten a haircut in town and shaved very carefully. He wanted to look his best for Sarah. People began arriving at the church early. Many of the families from the surrounding farms came in their wagons. They were curious about the wedding and wanted to show their support for James and Sarah. Even some people who had been part of the gossip came to the wedding. They had been thinking about what James had said at the church social. Maybe they had been wrong to judge Sarah so harshly. Thomas Hartwell came to the wedding too, but he sat in the back of the church by himself. He still looked angry and jealous. Some people wondered why he had come at all. When it was time for the ceremony, James stood at the front of the church with Reverend Williams. He was nervous but happy. He kept looking toward the back of the church, waiting for Sarah to arrive. Finally, the church doors opened. Sarah walked in slowly, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers. She had no father to walk her down the aisle, so she walked alone. But she did not look lonely. She looked proud and happy. Everyone in the church turned to look at her. Even the people who had been cruel about her had to admit that she looked beautiful. Her blue dress rustled as she walked. The flowers in her hair caught the sunlight from the church windows. James felt his heart skip when he saw Sarah. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. But more than that, she was walking toward him with love shining in her eyes. She was choosing him, just as he was choosing her. When Sarah reached the front of the church, she and James stood side by side. Reverend Williams began the ceremony. "Are gathered here today to join James Sullivan and Sarah Mitchell in marriage," the Reverend said. "Marriage is a sacred bond between two people who choose to love each other through good times and bad times." The Reverend asked James and Sarah to face each other and hold hands. Sarah's hands were trembling a little, but James held them steady. "James," the Reverend said, "do you take Sarah to be your wife? Do you promise to love her and honor her and protect her for as long as you both shall live?" "I do," James said clearly. His voice was strong and sure. "Sarah," the Reverend said, "do you take James to be your husband? Do you promise to love him and honor him and stand by him for as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Sarah said. Her voice was soft, but everyone could hear her. Then James and Sarah said their own vows to each other. "Sarah," James said, "I promise to love you with all my heart. I promise to take care of you when you are sick and celebrate with you when you are happy. I promise to be your partner and your friend for the rest of my life." Sarah had tears in her eyes when she said her vows. "James," she said, "I promise to love you and support you always. I promise to work beside you and build a life with you. I promise to be faithful to you until the day I die." Reverend Williams blessed their marriage and pronounced them husband and wife. "You may kiss your bride," he told James. James kissed Sarah gently while everyone in the church clapped and cheered. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling, through happy tears. After the ceremony, everyone went to James and Sarah's ranch for the wedding party. The neighbor women had prepared a wonderful feast. There were tables full of food set up in the yard. Someone had brought a fiddle and was playing music for dancing. Sarah changed from her wedding dress into a simpler dress for the party. But she kept the flowers in her hair. James could not stop smiling as he talked to their guests. People who had been cold to Sarah before came up to congratulate her. They could see how happy she and James were together. It was hard to believe that their love was anything but real and good. "I was wrong about you," one woman told Sarah. "I can see that you are a good woman who makes James happy." "Thank you," Sarah said graciously. She did not hold grudges against people who had judged her. She understood that small towns were suspicious of strangers. Thomas Hartwell stayed at the party but did not talk to anyone much. He stood by himself and watched James and Sarah together. It was clear that they were truly in love. Thomas realized that he had lost something valuable when he rejected Sarah. As the sun began to set, James and Sarah had their first dance as husband and wife. The fiddle player played a slow, sweet song while they danced in their yard surrounded by friends and neighbors. "Are you happy?" James asked as they danced. "Happier than I ever thought I could be," Sarah said. "Are you?" "Yes," James said. "I feel like the luckiest man in the world." After the guests went home, James and Sarah sat on their front porch as husband and wife. Sarah still wore the flowers in her hair. James still had his good suit on. "We did it," Sarah said. "We are really married." "We are," James said. "How does it feel?" "It feels right," Sarah said. "Like this is how things were always supposed to be." James took Sarah's hand and looked at her wedding ring next to her engagement ring. "I have something to tell you," he said. "What is it?" "I was worried that marrying again would feel like I was betraying Margaret," James said. "But it does not feel that way at all. It feels like I am starting a new chapter of my life. A happy chapter." "I'm glad," Sarah said. "I want you to be happy. I want us both to be happy." They talked about their plans for the future. They wanted to expand the ranch and start a family. Sarah still wanted to teach school someday. James wanted to build her a proper schoolhouse right on their land. "Do you think Thomas will leave us alone now?" Sarah asked. "I think so," James said. "He saw today that what we have is real. He saw that you chose me freely and that we are happy together." As the stars came out, James and Sarah went inside their house. It was the same house where Sarah had first stayed as a guest. But now it was truly her home. She was not just Sarah Mitchell, the abandoned mail-order bride. She was Sarah Sullivan, the beloved wife of a good man. Years later, James and Sarah would look back on this day as the beginning of their real life together. They would have children who played in the yard where they had their wedding dance. Sarah would indeed start a school on their ranch, and she would teach the children of their neighbors and friends. The gossip about them would fade away as people saw how devoted they were to each other and how hard they worked to build a good life together. Sarah would become one of the most respected women in Cedar Ridge. Thomas Hartwell would eventually leave Montana, unable to find happiness there after seeing what he had given up. But James and Sarah rarely thought about him. They were too busy living their happy life together. On their first anniversary, James took Sarah back to the meadow where he had proposed to her. They had a picnic there and talked about all the good things that had happened in their first year of marriage. "Do you ever regret coming to Montana?" James asked. "Never," Sarah said. "Coming here led me to you. Everything bad that happened was worth it because it brought me to this life with you." James kissed his wife in the same meadow where Margaret's ashes had been scattered. He no longer felt guilty about loving again. Margaret would have wanted him to be happy, and Sarah made him happier than he had ever thought possible. "I love you, Mrs. Sullivan," James said. "I love you too, Mr. Sullivan," Sarah said. As they sat in the meadow surrounded by wildflowers, Sarah thought about how much her life had changed. She had come to Montana as a mail-order bride hoping for security and a home. Instead, she had found something much better. She had found true love with a man who saw her worth and chose to cherish her. Sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes being rejected by the wrong person leads you straight to the right person. Sometimes, what feels like the end of your dreams is really just the beginning of something even better. Sarah had learned all of these things on her journey from Chicago to Montana. She had learned that she was strong enough to start over when life knocked her down,